Hi, I'm Dan Elias, and you're back with another episode of Meet the Collection. Today I'd like to look at a couple of portraits and a couple of interesting portrait painters. To start off, let's take a look at, let's do a different kind of a search than we did last time. Let's do an advanced search for, for Creator, Sally Gardner. Here we go. Now, actually, I've made a list of all the things I want to show you today, but Sally Gardner was an interesting person. She was born in 1799. She lived as a single woman all her life, and she made her living, I think, as a portrait painter. She painted pictures of her relatives. She painted pictures of people in town. They're wonderful, whimsical portraits. They're kind of folky, but they have a lot of life in them. This funny, quite beautiful, I think, touching portrait of a young child dressed up in a fancy, perhaps velvet suit with silver buttons and a white ruff. Really quite a great thing. And of course, this early find, an early portrait of John Lennon. Actually, Benjamin Brown Jr., it was probably painted in 1830. Then in her oeuvre, I think this is, I think, her finest portrait, really the best portrait that she did. And let's take a little bit closer look. This is a portrait of Arthur Cooper. You can see she's kind of put a great halo of light around him. She's given him an extraordinarily intelligent, almost soulful look. Those eyes are really pretty extraordinary, and the full mouth. He's quite formally dressed, a black, perhaps wool suit, maybe velvet collar, and a white shirt front with cravat and studs. He's a person of substance. Well, Arthur Cooper was a person of substance. He was a deacon and founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church of Zion here on Nantucket. He actually arrived here as a runaway slave from Virginia, as many slaves did. He came to Nantucket, and others came to New Bedford looking for work in the whaling industry. He actually stayed landside and was a major figure in the neighborhood of New Guinea. In 1822, slave catchers came to catch him from Virginia, Virginia Marshals. His neighbors in New Guinea, the African American community, came out and protected him, barred the way to his house. And white Quaker townspeople, neighbors as well, came out to help. They argued with the marshals and fought with them, eventually threatening to arrest them, while Arthur Cooper, his wife, his freeborn wife, and 2 kids were spirited out the back by Oliver Gardner, who it turns out was Sally Gardner's first cousin. Oliver Gardner took Arthur Cooper, hid him in his attic, and Oliver Gardner's 6-year-old daughter, Anna Gardner, was alive at that time. She was 6 years old, and she took all of this in, and it really changed her. She became an ardent abolitionist. As a teenager, she subscribed to William Lloyd Garrison's The Liberator, the anti-slavery newspaper. She taught at the African school. She went to school herself at Cyrus Pierce's school on Nantucket. He was a famed educator and social progressive, believed in education for African Americans, freedom for slaves, and women's rights. She became the first teacher at the African school in 1836 at the age of 20. She was one teacher for 50 students in this schoolhouse, one-room schoolhouse, ages 5 or 6 to 17. She encouraged a couple of her older students to sit for the exams for admission to the high school. And when they won, passed the exams and won entrance to the high school, they were denied admittance on account of their color by the town, by vote of the town, which overrode the school committee that had granted them admittance. And Anna was outraged by this. She was outraged. She was disowned in the fracas as a Quaker by the monthly meeting of Quakers, and she quit in protest in 1840. She became the here. Let's get a closer look at her. She's really an extraordinary person. She became the first secretary of the Nantucket Anti-Slavery Society, and she invited Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison, with the young Frederick Douglass, who came and gave his first speech to a mixed audience of African Americans and whites at the first anti-slavery convention in 1841 at her invitation. She invited him back again in 1842 and subsequent years. In 1842 was the famous year of the riots about segregation and the role of the church in segregation. And she then left Nantucket, went to the South, taught children in a school for freedmen in the South prior to the Civil War, and then through the Civil War and Reconstruction. Then coming back to Nantucket in the 1870s and becoming the first secretary of the Nantucket Sorosis, a society for the education of women and for the advocacy for women's rights and the right to vote in particular. This portrait was painted by Wendell Macy in her later years. She lived until 1901, and obviously Wendell Macy must have painted this portrait of her not so many years before that. Again, a really intelligent portrait, again making wonderful use of light and shadow in this case. Wendell Macy is clearly taking a lesson from Elizabeth Rebecca Coffin, a Nantucket painter who had studied with Thomas Eakins. Both of them painted in this way, kind of carving a face out of light and shadow. You can see this extraordinary face telling a tale of years lived and battles fought. She and Wendell Macy, the painter of this portrait, then went on to work together to found the NHA, the Nantucket Historical Association. So I just wanted to share with you these two great portraits and the story of activism in support of equal rights for African American people, for people of all colors and backgrounds, and also for women. Thank you for joining me, and meet the collection again. Come search our collection and find the stories that you like. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.